It was a grand experiment, the release of a captive killer whale, taken home to Iceland after so many years in an aquarium.
Keiko is just the most amazing whale that's ever lived.
Tonight, the beloved Keiko, Hollywood's Free Willy, is gone.
Now, first for local news, KOMO 4 News.
Good evening. We got the heartbreaking news from Norway tonight. Keiko, the orca whale known to millions as the star of the Free Willy movies, is dead. He died this afternoon in Norwegian coastal waters following the sudden onset of pneumonia. It was quite an experiment when Keiko was taken from that aquarium in Mexico City and then moved on to the Oregon aquarium where he was rehabilitated and eventually set free. Here's KOMO's Joe Furia.
Hard to believe it's been 10 years since so many of us first met Keiko. The star of Free Willy exposed millions to the issue of captive whales back in 1993. The drive to set Keiko free started after he was found sick in a Mexico City aquarium. The project to reintegrate Keiko with a pod of wild killer whales stirred an ocean of interest worldwide.
There he goes.
Seattle's Michael Harris, a spokesperson for the Free Willy Keiko Foundation, says this orca opened people's eyes.
I find Keiko to be a great inspiration, and I know that tens of millions of people around the world do as well, and I'm going to miss him.
Keiko was rehabilitated at the Oregon Coast Aquarium, then airlifted to Iceland in 1998. His handlers prepared him for the wild, teaching him something that to many seemed natural, yet in captivity he'd never had to do: catch his own live fish. Keiko was released from Iceland in July 2002 and swam straight to Norway, an 870-mile trip that seemed to some to be a search for human companionship. He first turned up near a Norwegian village. There he allowed fans to pet and play with him, becoming such an attraction that animal protection authorities imposed a ban on approaching him. At 27, he'd already outlived most whales in captivity. But those closest to Keiko had no idea he was so sick. No idea the end of an incredible story was so close at hand.
No, Keiko actually had been really healthy. He'd been swimming actively, good appetite. It was only yesterday that we started to see any signs of problems. And Keiko was just the most amazing whale that's ever lived.
Well, he didn't live as long as many had hoped, but for 5 years, Keiko managed to become what so many had long wanted him to be: a wild whale. Kathy?
It was quite a story. Joe, thank you very much. The Orca Conservancy says Keiko's death should not affect plans to relocate Luna. That's a young orca whale from Canada who's planning to come home to Washington waters. Luna is living off Vancouver Island. He became separated from his family pod more than 2 years ago, and he's not doing well by himself. He's become a threat to boats and to himself. Canada and the United States plan to reunite Luna with his L-Pod family in the spring.
We all remember when the movie star made his home on the Oregon coast. Tens of thousands from the Pacific Northwest would come to catch a glimpse of the icon known as Keiko. Now his caretakers in the Free Willy Foundation are speaking out about the orca's sudden and unexpected death. The Free Willy star, who was once a main attraction along the Oregon coast, lay lifeless in the chilly waters of Norway. Caretakers say it happened fast. The 27-year-old orca seemed ill on Thursday and then stopped eating. He was then found dead Friday night after he was having trouble breathing.
In the end, we couldn't hear him breathe anymore, so that's when we took our flashlight and went out to have a closer look.
Pneumonia is being listed as the most likely cause of Keiko's death, who made Norway his home late last summer after surfacing in Western Fjord. It's been an unusual life for the 35-foot-long mammal. He starred in 3 Free Willy movies. He was then captured in Iceland in 1979 and sold to a Mexico City aquarium. 7 years later, he arrived at the Oregon Coast Aquarium in Newport to start rehabilitation.
Big guy, you want to come over here?
Then 2 years later, hundreds of onlookers watched as handlers prepared the thriving orca for his journey home to his native waters of Iceland. The Northwest spokesperson for the Free Willy Foundation, Michael Harris, says Keiko enjoyed freedom in the open sea for 5 years, even though he never completely returned to the wild. Harris says they knew it would be tough for Keiko to adapt to the wild after spending so many years in captivity.
And yeah, it cost a lot of money to do that, as any startup project would cost a lot of money to do. This has never been done before. But at the same time, how do you place a dollar value on a promise kept to millions of kids?
And it was that promise and passion for the beloved orca, who won hearts in Oregon and across the world, that kept caretakers by his side. No doubt, his memory will live on.
But the most extraordinary memory is when we saw him with wild killer whales.
Keiko is a part of all of our hearts. You know, he was an amazing animal, and he wasn't just a cool killer whale. It just was a cool soul in a lot of ways.
Touching story, little Keiko. Caretakers say Keiko will either be brought up on land or towed out to sea. They might hold a memorial service for him. We'll keep you posted. Staff of the Oregon Coast Aquarium is also shocked to hear the news of Keiko's death. The senior mammologist who worked with Keiko says it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to work with the intelligent mammal.
Anyone that worked with him was touched by him. He was a very unique animal. He adapted well to people, obviously maybe a little too well. He was just an amazing animal.
Since Keiko's departure 5 years ago, the Oregon Coast Aquarium has built new attractions, such as the Passages of the Deep, to draw tourists.